So what would you say is your resilience quotient these days? Hey friends, it's Pastor Mike from Fellowship Church. Always enjoy connecting with you midweek. Hope you dug out pretty well from this past weekend snowfall. Hope you're doing well. Hope you know that we love you and we're praying for you and we care for you. That question for you again, what's your resilience quotient these days? Now, that's kind of a strange word to use. Let me offer a thought about that. If you've read through the book of 2 Corinthians, that's in the New Testament of the Bible, the Apostle Paul writes a letter to a church in Corinth, pretty difficult place to be a church. He writes a letter to them that's a letter of encouragement. And in the course of the letter, about chapter 11, I think, the Apostle Paul details out some of his experiences in ministry. And I'll tell you, if you're a pastor wannabe, you could read through 2 Corinthians 11 and say, not for me, man. Because the Apostle Paul goes on to say that he had been shipwrecked, he had been whipped, he'd been beaten with rods, he'd been left cold outside, he'd been hungry, he'd been thirsty, all kinds of sufferings that the Apostle Paul had gone through. And anybody would say, well, how in the world did he ever make it through all of that? And how did Paul continue to pastor churches and plant churches and encourage people? I mean, we believe that 2 Corinthians was kind of early in his ministry, but there he is. He just keeps going and going and going. He's the Energizer Bunny of the gospel. How does Paul do it? Well, it's because Paul was resilient. Someone today might say that he had a high resilience quotient. Now, my first experience with resilience was decades ago in the manufacturing business. In the manufacturing business, we would take a part and we would stress that part. We would bend it or stretch it or twist it. And our goal was to see how well that part would bounce back to its original condition. If the part would return to its original condition, we would say it has a high resilience quotient. If we bent the part and it cracked, or if it wasn't able to return fully to its original position, we would say it has a bit of a lower resilience quotient. High resilience quotient means that something returns to its original condition very well. Okay, Mike, where are you going with all this? Well, friends, at some point in time in your life, you're going to be bent, or you're going to be twisted, or you may be moved in a direction that you don't feel comfortable with. You'll face adversity at some point in time in your life, spiritually, emotionally, physically, maybe relationally. You're going to face obstacles in this life. Here's something that we all know. Resilient people are people who are able to make it through those kinds of experiences, and somehow they return to their original condition. And yet you all know people who have gone through adversarial experiences and they never quite return to their original condition. We would say that their resilience quotient was a little bit lower. Okay, well, that all sounds great, Mike. How do we get there? Well, two things I'd like to share with you about the Apostle Paul and his resilience quotient. First of all, people who have a high resilience quotient, that is, they're able to keep going through difficult circumstances, they have vision. They keep their eyes forward. The Apostle Paul could go through all kinds of adversity, and yet he knew why he was facing it. It was the gospel. It was God's call upon his life. People who can keep their eyes fixed on God in the midst of difficult circumstances, they have a high resilience quotient. Something else that you would find in Paul's letters, Paul was always surrounded by other people. He had friends in ministry, he had supporters, he had encouragers, people who have other people who travel life's paths with them. They have a higher resilience quotient. So these days, when you look at your life and all of the adversity, all of the challenges that you face in this crazy world we live in, what would you say is your resilience quotient today? And if you don't like where it's at, what are you going to do to fix that? How can you increase your resilience quotient so that you're one of those people who's always returning to the right place? May that be true for all of you. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Know again that we love you and we're praying for you, and may you have a high resilience quotient in this crazy world we live in. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.